Welcome to the Menopause Stories podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tamara Beckford, founder and medical director of Truly Balanced Wellness Care. This is the space where we stop the guesswork and start the optimization. We're pulling back the curtain on that midlife hijack and giving high-achieving women the clinical roadmaps and unfiltered stories they need to reclaim their edge. Let's get into today's story. You've been sleeping fine for years, and then suddenly it's like 2 a.m. and you're wide awake and your heart's racing and you kick that cover off like bam! And then you're feeling hot like in ways that it just does not feel familiar. You're like, wait a minute, my period did come early this month, and then last month it was late, and before that it was really, really heavy. And then you're like, it was so heavy I had to cancel plans. I was cramping. I'm like, why am I cramping? And then you talk to your best friend, the one who you trust with everything. You know how that one. We all have that best friend. And you told her how you were feeling, and she was like, girl, you losing your mind. Because for 2 years, the last 2 years, before anybody really told you what was going on, you actually were in perimenopause. You didn't even realize it. You were like, listen, girl, I feel like I am losing my mind. And she's like, maybe you are, but maybe you're not. Does any of that sound familiar? If you're someone between your mid-30s and your early 50s and your body suddenly feels like it's operating on a different rule book, this episode is for you. Welcome back to Menopause Stories podcast. This is a podcast where we have some honest conversation about what's going on in your body that no one else seems to be having. And I'm so glad that you're here. Today we're going to answer one of the most common questions that I receive. It is really common. And I mean this genuinely. I hear this like almost every week. And when I'm talking to my ladies out there, a lot of us feel like this. They're like, how do I actually know if I'm in perimenopause? How many of you have had that question, right? Because here's what's going on. Most women have never been told what perimenopause is and when it really starts. Because it's such a wide range, it can be like 10 years before your last period. Let that sink in. 10 years. So that means the symptoms that you've been brushing off or that your doctor might have been attributing to stress or anxiety or just getting older might actually be hormone shifting. Alrighty, in the next 25 minutes or so, we're going to cover what perimenopause is, symptoms that signal it's starting, why it gets missed so often, or even why it gets misdiagnosed, and most importantly, what can you do right now? So let's get in. Alrighty. First, what is perimenopause? I know. Let's talk about it. Let's define what perimenopause actually is. Because the word perimenopause gets thrown around a lot. I think there was a comedian, she was on stage and I thought it was really funny. She said, yeah, I'm going through perimenopause. That's like menopause cool cousin. And really, when we really think about it, there is a lot of confusion about really what perimenopause is. But let's start by breaking down the word, right? So peri really means around. That's right. That's taking us back to our Latin days. All of us who love to break down words with the roots, peri means around. So perimenopause literally means around menopause. And it's a transitional phase that your body goes through as your ovaries gradually wind down the production of estrogen and progesterone. Now here's the distinction. Perimenopause is around menopause, right? It's the years around it. Menopause is actually one day. It is the 12-month anniversary of your last period. That's it. One moment in time. It's confirmed in retrospect. So if you're not tracking your period, you need to be tracking your period. I mean, if you're like me and I was like, well, I ain't got to worry about it no more, and I stopped tracking it. But then when you actually start tracking it, you're like, ooh, oh man, yeah, you got to track your period. I know. But tracking it helps give us so much information, right? Because if you're really trying to define and to figure out if you are in menopause or if you have hit menopause, I should say, it literally is 12 months to the day after your last period. So everything leading up to that one day is perimenopause. And that can last from 4 years up to 10 years. Now here where it's really get important, your hormones during this time is declining, but it's not declining smoothly. It's not predictably. It's not going down a slope and just sliding down a slide like they do on the playground. It is fluctuating. It's kind of more like a roller coaster, like boom, 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 just up and down. And sometimes it can be so wild. Estrogen can peak high one week and crash the next. And all of those fluctuation and not just the decline, it can drive women crazy. And some of our symptoms are just like really out there. Today I met a couple. They've been married for 56 years and they asked, what it is that I do. And I told them like, yeah, I help women going through menopause, perimenopause. The husband said, I needed you like 30 years ago. And the wife, she was so cute. She's like, oh my God, it was so chaotic, that period in life during that time. But she says, one of my friends really, really had it bad. And she ended up really having mental health challenges because of just this crazy fluctuation in hormones. So yeah, we go through it. We go through it a lot. And that's why it's like such a confusing portion, right? It's a confusing phase because you're kind of expecting it to slowly decline and your symptoms to just come in marching one by one in a way that you could say, oh, that's that symptom and that's that other symptom, but that's not what happens. And then it's also very different in everyone, right? It's very different. So you could be feeling good one week and then horrible the next week, and then the other week you feel fine again. And you're thinking, am I just imagining this? And the first thing that we go after is, am I just stressed out? No, you're not imagining it. Your hormones are doing something real and your body, it's responding to it, right? So perimenopause typically begins in the early to mid 40s, but some women can have it as early as 35. That's right. And for those who've had certain procedures, and, you might have had to have some surgical intervention, such as if you had like a cancer, and if you've had treatments for cancer, such as radiation or chemotherapy, and some of that can put you into early menopause or medical menopause, as we usually call it. So depending on the age, some women might also experience it a lot earlier than 35. So what should you look for? What are the signs, right? What are the signs? Okay, how do you know? How do you know? I like that question, like, how do I know? So I'm going to share some of the most common symptoms, and some of these might be familiar. Some of them will probably surprise you. But perimenopause shows up in so many ways beyond just hot flashes. Everyone's talking about hot flash. But on here, I love to let us know that hot flashes alone is not the only thing. So one of the things you might notice is a change in your cycle. So if you're not tracking your cycles, ladies, this is your warning. Please start tracking your cycles, right? The most clear early sign is a shift in your menstrual cycle. So your period that used to come like clockwork, I'm at every 28 day, I'm at every 31 day, might now start arriving earlier, or it might start happening later. They might even become shorter or long. And I know some women are like, woo, I'm 3 days and done. Others are like, I'm 5 days, but day 1 and 2 light. And then all of a sudden you're having heavier and heavier periods. Or for some women, you're just so used to just having heavy periods and then it starts getting lighter. Others, you might start skipping a month. For some, you might skip 1, 2, or 3 months consecutively. And you're like, when you start to notice the change in your cycle that's been predictable for years and years and years, that's a sign that you are in that perimenopausal phase. Yes, so that's something to keep in mind. So here's another thing. The hot flashes and night sweats. This is the one that everybody talks about, right? We hear this one often. So it's the most well-known symptoms. A hot flash is a sudden wave of warmth that usually in the face and the neck and the chest is where you feel it. But it can come like with some flushing and sweating and heart racing and all of that. And then with the night portion of it, the night sweats, essentially you're just lying down, minding your business, probably sleeping, and then that same wave of heat and sweat and palpitation just rushes you up into you, and then it wakes you up. And it's very, very disruptive. And of course, it's going to rob you of rest, because if you are trying to sleep and some like inferno starts happening on the inside, yeah, it's going to wake you up. But let's put it like this. Not every woman goes through hot flashes. And so if you're not one that have hot flashes, you might be feeling like, well, I don't know if I'm going through perimenopause, because everyone talks about hot flashes and I don't have hot flashes, so maybe I'm just stressed. No, hot flashes is just one of the symptoms. Now, sleep disturbances is another thing, of course, that happens. So whether you're having night sweats, and we just talked about like the inferno that's happening in nighttime, a lot of women, they experience sleep disturbances in other ways. So you might have problems falling asleep, and then you have some women that in the middle of the night, they just have problems staying asleep or just waking up for no reason at all. And it's usually between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, and your mind starts trying to go over things that makes no sense. You're trying to solve problems in the middle of the night, and it's just like, why am I trying to solve this problem? It's not that deep. I really need to be sleeping so that I can be rested for XYZ, right? So that alone is the sleep disturbance is alone. That's, if you're not getting enough rest, you can understand how it can affect the next day, right? But what is causing this sleep disturbance is usually a decline in progesterone, which progesterone naturally, produced by our ovaries, which our ovaries are slowly shutting down. It's kind of like it's talking about we're getting a grand closing and, it's getting rid of all of the inventory. So once the progesterone inventory starts going down, our natural common effect that we get from progesterone stops happening. And the sleep support, we stop having that. And therefore, we're waking up in the middle of the night. We start having some brain fog. We start having some memory changes. All of this is afflicted to our progesterone that's slowly declining. Now, brain fog and memory changes. This one is a big one that gets women off guard, because you walk into a room and you forget, like, why you walk into this room? Like, I was talking to a friend recently, and, she mentioned that, you get up. I don't know about you, but a lot of times during this time when I get up to walk into the room, it's not like I'll get up, walk into the room slowly trying to think of why am I walking in that room. I walk into that room with fervor, like really strong, and then have to put a pause, because that's when it's like, why am I even in this room? I had a friend, as I was telling you, she said she had to keep talking to her kids and just like, why did I go in this room? And the kids were like, well, Ma, you were talking about A, B, and C. And she's like, oh, yeah. Now I remember. And that's what happens. We just go into rooms and we are just caught off guard. And we're like, why am I here? You start to lose some words mid-sentence. You start to feel like you're thinking slower than normal. You don't feel as sharp. And, some of this, it is related to like we talked about the progesterone inventory in the shop that's closing. Our estrogen also plays a huge role in our cognitive function. So when the inventory starts going down, that also can happen. And while the brain fog of perimenopause is temporary, it can be frightening. If you don't know what it is and you don't know what's causing it, you can really sit and think like, am I getting dementia? Am I going crazy? Am I having even some women have even thought that they were having strokes. And I know from the outside, it might be like, is it that deep? Yes, it is. Because when you have prided yourself on your memory and your thought and being sharp and being able to run your business, your company, your family at this high level, and then all of a sudden you are just constantly things and you can't prioritize things and you can't use those executive function, it can be disturbing emotionally, and it can also be disturbing on a functional level, right? So yes, it's that deep. A next thing that happens is mood changes and anxiety. Now here's one that I want to really spend a little bit more time on: mood changes, specifically worsening anxiety. It's often a signal of perimenopause, and it's one of those symptoms that happens a little bit earlier. And a lot of times I feel like we forget about it because everyone's looking for hot flashes before anything else. But that anxiety it really is one that creeps in. And if we aren't aware, or if we aren't like keeping our minds open, we might start to feel like something crazy is going on. So many women describe this as a sense of feeling like on the edge, or they're very irritable, emotionally raw, something that this just never really experienced before. And because anxiety and depression are so commonly misunderstood, women start to get placed on antidepressant or anti-anxiety medicine, or for years and years no one is really thinking that this could be hormonal related. They are just like, oh, I'm starting to get anxious. But if you really think about it, if you've never been an anxious person, and then you're in this age range where it is known that our hormones are declining, and that the instability in the hormones along with the decline in the hormones can produce this symptom, we should think that hormones should be playing a role in how that woman is feeling, versus all of a sudden she just developed anxiety and depression, right? Alrighty, don't worry. We'll come back to it. Another symptom that's worth knowing on this list is vaginal dryness, changes in sexual comfort, low libido, weight changes, especially around the belly. We've discussed that before. Heart palpitation, joint pain, stiffness, headaches, migraines. Oh man. And changes to your hair and nails. That thinning hair, ooh, Lord, yes. So none of these are really being diagnosed alone. But if you're experiencing several of them together, especially if they're new, your body's trying to tell you something. And I think it's time for us to listen, right? We need to listen. So let me put this in context with a rough timeline, because understanding where you might be really grounding. So when we think about this whole timeline of perimenopause, when you're in the early phases, which can start in your late 30s or early 40s, your hormone shift is very subtle. So your cycles might become irregular, but you might notice some worsening PMS symptoms. You might notice some anxiety, lighter or shorter periods, or changes to your sleep. But most women, they don't connect that with this being hormonal at all. But with you listening to this podcast, you will start to make that connection, right? So in the middle phase, things start to happen in the middle phase around like mid to late 40s. And that's when you start noticing their cycles might become irregular. And it's a little bit more obvious at that point. Some women will get hot flashes, night sweats, and that might show up more frequently. The brain fog might this time be more noticeable. And that's when women usually start seeking answers. But if you really think about it, that's almost like 7 years after this whole thing started. But it becomes more prominent at that time in the mid phase of perimenopause. Then when you get to the late phases, that's supposing like you're approaching that final transition. It's kind of like the plane's about to land. Your periods become infrequent. So you might go 60 or 90 days between cycle. And with that, your estrogen decline is more rapid now, and your symptoms can intensify. So when you have gone 12 consecutive months, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 months in a row without a period, that day you've reached menopause. And the day after that, you're considered postmenopausal. So the average age in the US is 51, but it can happen from age 45 all the way up to 55. And all of those ages are considered typical. So you don't have to be 51 years of age in order to be considered, okay, I hit menopause. I cannot be in menopause because I'm 47. I can't be in menopause because, no, 12 consecutive months of not having your period, that day is menopause. The day after that is postmenopause, irrespective of if you're 51 or not. All right? Good. Hopefully we were able to clear that up. Now, so what is it that, we all have in common? So if all of this is really, really, really so common, so why is it missed so often? Why do many women go years without getting the right answer? Well, let's think about it. There are a few reasons. First, hormonal testing can be unreliable during perimenopause. I know a lot of times we want hormonal testing, but as we mentioned before, to test before getting treatment, it's not really necessary. But to test while you're being treated to see if it's been effective, yeah. But the most common test that we usually check is the FSH, which is the follicular stimulating hormone, right? But here's the problem. During perimenopause, your hormones shift so drastically from one week to the that blood test on one single day, like I said before, it can come back normal. And because it's normal that one day does not necessarily mean that everything is fine. Because the week after, it could have been abnormal, but we just tested it during a time that it just so happened to show up normal. So that's challenging, right? The second is something that we talked about a lot here, which is the training gap. In medical school, we are not trained that much on menopause, much like perimenopause. I don't even think we were talking about perimenopause when I was in med school. But many physicians right now have decided that, they want to get additional training. But during the time when we were in med school, we weren't really getting extensive training on menopause and perimenopause. It just wasn't prioritized in medical education for a long time. Now it's slowly changing, but we're still not there yet. Let's just be honest, right? Now, a third reason, right, is that symptoms get attributed to other things. Like we talk about anxiety, and anxiety and the mood change is one of those first things that's happening. And anxiety gets treated directly as anxiety, but not really thinking that there's a deeper thing that's going on. Sleep problem gets treated as insomnia, but not really thinking there's a deeper problem going on. Weight gain gets treated as, that's just your lifestyle, or you're just aging, but a deeper understanding or going deeper to see if, what's going on hormonally was not something that was really brought to the top of some of the doctors' minds during that time, especially because, one, we were not trained initially on that. So connecting that dot didn't really make sense initially. So what's the result? On average, women waited 7 years before getting real answers and support. 7 years. That's 7 years of feeling unwell, 7 years of not understanding why, 7 years of just stressing, thinking that you're crazy. That's 7 years of just like, at that point, women had given up. And as we even said, one of the stories that I told you earlier, that's why some women start thinking that this is just straight mental health. And they're just like, oh, she just gone crazy. It's 7 years of not getting answer and not feeling right within your own body. Think about that. That's a long time. Now, here's what I want you to hear. That's not okay. And it's not inevitable. It's not inevitable. So what can you do right now? What can you actually do? Let me give you 5 concrete things that you can do. Start tracking. Keep a track of your period, cycle dates, and your symptoms. Even if it's just a note in your phone, right? Just keep track. Note what's changed, what's new, what's getting worse. When you do that, bring it up to your doctor when you see them and have that conversation, right? Like, hey, something's changing. Number 2, name it in your appointments. Don't just say, I've been feeling not right, which is something that, I've said that because sometimes you might not be able to put a finger on it, but just say, I'm wondering, is it possible that I'm in perimenopause? I'd like to talk about my hormones. Naming it specifically at least brings it to your doctor's attention that you're looking at that thing. Because I just don't feel right. Not everyone is going to be able to attribute that to say, wow, you know what? When I look at your age and your range, maybe you're in perimenopause. So if you have that at top of mind, don't be afraid to bring it up to your doctor. Number 3, look at your foundations, sleep, stress, nutrition, movement, and all of that, and see how is it affecting your body and your experiences during this time. Not everything's really a cure. It's not always a cure, but you might have some relief if you're able to address some of these things, right? 4, seek out a specialist if you need to. Yes, someone who specifically is trained and willing to treat you as a woman with hormonal needs. Yes, someone who understands the perimenopause to menopause transition and the person who is willing to give you the attention and care that you deserve. Look out for that person. If you don't find them the first time, look, and change until you can get that person as a part of your team to take care of you. Number 5, don't go through this alone. Whether there's a community, a friend, a podcast like this one, or a support group that can help you through this time, to help you understand what's going on. isolation makes this so much harder. I know a lot of times with some of my guests that I've had here on the podcast, a lot of times we're like, wait a minute, my mother never told me this. I didn't realize this. But you can imagine, like, they were going through it in isolation. And now we're at this stage and this phase where we're now talking about it and we're understanding so many different assets about this process. We shouldn't go through it in isolation either, right? So make sure that you connect with the community or keep tuned to this podcast in this podcast community so you can understand what's going on and you do not feel like you're going through this in isolation. So let me leave you with this. Okay, first of all, perimenopause is not a disease. It's not something that's happening to you. It's just something that your body, it's just moving through a phase. And it deserves your curiosity, your attention, but most importantly, it really deserves support. If today's episode resonated with you, if you heard yourself in any of it, please share with someone who might need to hear it too. It could be your sister, your colleague, your friend who keeps saying that she doesn't understand what's wrong with her. I just don't feel right. I just don't feel right. Let her know, you know what? I got something for you. Listen to this podcast because this information, it can change so many lives and it can change so many things for people. Now, if you're ready to take a real next step, if you're ready to talk through your symptoms with someone who truly understands this transition, I'd love to invite you to book a complimentary consultation. You can do that at Truly Balance DWC, that's trulybalancedwc.com. The link is in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you and to be able to see if I can support you, right? So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking your health seriously, and I cannot wait to catch you next time on the next episode. You've been listening to the Menopause Stories podcast. If today's conversation hit home, don't let your story stay stuck in that midlife hijack. Head over to the show notes to book your strategy session and to join the movement of women redefining their power. I'm Dr. Tamara Beckford. Stay optimized, stay bold, and I'll catch you on the next episode. This episode is brought to you by Truly Balanced Wellness Care. Most high-level women are told that their lives are normal while they're struggling to lead through brain fog and fatigue. At Truly Balanced, we don't settle for not sick. We architect for peak performance. Whether you need a 30-minute hormone strategy session to audit your labs or are ready for our 3-month Jumpstart Intensive, we provide the physician-led roadmap to get you back to your best. Visit the link in the show notes or go to www.trulybalancedwc.com to secure your spot. Now, back to the conversation.